Talking to a woman like that, I don't care what was done. I don't care what I've done. I didn't even do anything to that man.
Bloody fucking dare you!
Don't be stupid. Don't be so stupid.
I'm not showing off.
Don't be so stupid.
I am tired.
Calm down.
No!
Tina, man, get up. You're assaulting me, man.
Oh, I'm assaulting you?
Yeah,
I've been here for fucking years. I'm assaulting you?
Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. Dehumanization is a psychological process whereby opponents view each other as less than human and thus not deserving of moral consideration. Dehumanization is actually an extension of a less intense process of developing an enemy image of the opponent. During the course of a long-lasting conflict, feelings of anger, fear, and distrust shape the way that parties perceive each other.
For me, as a feminist, the most important thing is to destroy patriarchy. How long must we wait for men and boys to stop murdering us, to stop beating us, and to stop raping us? How many rapists must we kill? Not the state, because I disagree with the death penalty, and I want to get rid of incarceration. So I want women themselves. As a woman, I'm asking, how many rapists must we kill until men stop raping us?
So Mona...
Quoting, "Once certain groups are stigmatized as evil, morally inferior, and not fully human, the persecution of those groups becomes more psychologically acceptable. Restraints against aggression and violence begin to disappear. Not surprisingly, dehumanization increases the likelihood of violence and may cause a conflict to escalate out of control. Once a violence breakover has occurred, it may seem even more acceptable for people to do things that they would have regarded as morally unthinkable before."
We need to kill all men.
I made an inappropriate and flippant comment by saying this isn't my idea of a threesome, which was intended as a partisan comment about being in a photo with a liberal member of caucus.
Inappropriate, humiliating, and unwanted comments to me that were sexual in nature. These comments have caused me great stress and have negatively affected my work environment.
Earlier this year, I made an inappropriate and insensitive comment in the presence of the member from Longueuil, Charles Lemoyne. I have nothing but the greatest respect for this member and for this institution, and I sincerely apologize.
Does anyone really ask to elaborate these types of statements? I might be wrong, but as far as I know, if you're a woman these days, you can say boo, and the world collapses. And that's not necessarily a good thing. Even if you're a woman and you watch this, please don't feel too lucky, because this type of behavior are having a major impact in everyone's life, not only males.
I want you to think very carefully about the men in your lives. I want you to think about your fathers. I want you to think about your husbands. I want you to think about your brothers, your uncles, and your nephews. Was that men were never supposed to cry. Men were never supposed to show emotion. Men were never supposed to cry or show emotion, because to do so was to demonstrate to the rest of the world, which, by the way, was always out to get you, that you were weak somehow. Ignore how you feel, even when it hurts.
It happened 7 months ago, but became public only yesterday.
What's the idea behind being sexually harassed ages ago and suddenly one day you decide to destroy one's life with these type of allegations? Note that I'm not disregarding the abuse some women have gone through, but precisely because of these statements, the next woman that will be abused for real won't get the empathy and the support she should, because other women before her got triggered for making eye contact.
His statement made it sound like I did everything possible, and well, you know, she's just being irrational.
Calling her a triggered snowflake.
People are afraid to live what I've had to live for the last 12 hours. The trolls, I've had people offer to make sure I knew what a threesome was on social media.
how we've allowed sexually repressed, humourless women to determine appropriate behaviour controlling male-female interaction.
I think that the Me Too movement is an important place to jump off, and I don't think it should infect the workplace so that men and women can't interact naturally with each other anymore.
Another example of wannabe unicorns we're going to find in this article, quoting, Richard Ned Lebo, a professor of political theory at King's College London, and Simona Sharoni, a professor of women's and gender studies at Merrimack College, ended up in the same crowded elevator during a conference at a Hilton in San Francisco last month. To be honest, already her title calls for trouble. She's a professor of women's and gender studies. Ideally, we would be aware that everything we say and the way we behave in our life and the world has consequences, now or later. And I also speak for myself. I wonder at times if feminists will make me disappear one day. Back to the article. She said she offered to press the floor buttons for people in the elevator, whom she described as mostly conference attendees and all, except one other woman, white middle-aged men. Instead of saying a floor, Lebo smiled and asked for the women's lingerie department, and all his buddies laughed. Sharoni wrote in a complaint, the details of which he disputed to the association later that day. Sharoni, who wrote in her complaint that she has experienced sexual harassment in academia in the past and was shaken by the incident.
Oh, sick! Sick!
So, let me get this straight. If a woman has been sexually harassed in the past and now she's overreacting because of past experience, what makes her a person worthy of trust, worthy to have her allegations taken so seriously? It's clear to me and to many others that she's not in a good place psychologically. Why do we take people like her so seriously, without questioning their behavior and statements, especially if they seem not to be in a good place mentally? I've come to terms that most women don't know how men work, want, or desire. As a woman, I didn't have to make any effort my entire life. I never had concerns about how am I going to make a male interact with me, or even have him see me. In a male's world, on the other hand, it's really competitive, and they're going through a lot of rejections before they get the attention of a woman. And that's why some men might come across cringe or socially awkward, but that doesn't mean men are trying to sexually harass women at all times. Most men won't risk their reputation and image just so they will purposely hurt a woman. If you're at peace with yourself, surely you cannot see this type of jokes worth to be demonized. She also said that it took her a while to figure out that Lebo thought it was funny to make a reference to men shopping for lingerie while attending an academic conference. She said, I am still trying to come to terms with the fact that we froze and didn't confront him. Exactly. Because women won't risk confronting a male when they're alone. They will go after destroying his reputation. So she complained to the ISA, which stands for the International Studies Association, and now Lebo is risking possible legal action. While women are playing the victim after a night contact from men they don't like, it's kind of difficult to take serious past sexual harassment stories because, mind you, if a more attractive male would have even sneezed, she would have been delighted to be looked at.
Now he faces disciplinary charges for what she calls misogyny, an act that I call bitter, sad, and humorless. The offended prof is from a women's and gender study department whose ultimate goal is to remove any semblance of humor from the universe.
I'm sure all feminists agree with me. So that leaves me with, what is the difference between a strikingly good male making any comment to women and the not so good looking ones daring to look at us? In other words, we put up with so-called abuse if the man is good looking. And that works both ways. Men are also more likely to be abused by pretty women and stick around just because of their look. And in general, we tend to put up with people that are more attractive. We make allowances for them and so on, because evolution says they're the ones we should mate with, thus we make them a priority. But of course, we can't just make a speech about how we would have put up with cheap tactics and behavior if the man would have been Christian Grey. Since good-looking people are rare, or most likely are already taken, we end up hashtagging our stories with Me Too's, embittered by our life choices and the competitive sexual market. And then we throw it all at innocent men. All that wrapped up in, do you even know how many women have been killed by men in the 19th century? Why is everyone making everything about the past? Well, guess what? Those men are dead. However, the men today are alive, and the majority have nothing to do with the ones from any century, other than the reason we are alive today is because of those men and women, hence our ancestors. She keeps going with, for decades, women and other marginalized groups in the academy had to put up with white men who decide what counts as a violation and what is frivolous. She wrote in an email, as someone who has dedicated her life to confronting sexism and other forms of discrimination and oppression in academic spaces, I cannot and will not remain silent when misogyny is at play. According to Wikipedia, Leber was born in 1941 in France and was a refugee from Europe, the only member of his family to survive the World War II. He was taken to an orphanage before being adopted by an American family and grew up in New York City. So, the funny thing is that he might be coming from a marginalized group, but apparently he's not worthy to be protected because he's a man.
Paternity fraud uniquely affects men. The United States Selective Service, in the case of a draft, still uniquely affects men. Workplace deaths, disproportionately men. War deaths, overwhelmingly men. Suicide, overwhelmingly men. Sentencing disparity, life expectancy, child custody, child support, false rape allegations, criminal court bias, misandry, failure to launch, boys falling behind in education, homelessness, veterans issues, infant male genital mutilation, lack of parental choice once a child is conceived, lack of resources for male victims of domestic violence. So many issues that are heartbreaking.
Adversarial attitudes and perceptions develop and parties begin to attribute negative traits to their opponent. They may come to view the opponent as an evil enemy, deficient in moral virtue, or as dangerous, warlike monster.
Incredibly aggressive approach for you two. It looks like you're absolutely just smashing this innings.
Yeah, definitely. I want to come on another interview with you as well. That's the reason why I'm here. So just to see your eyes for the first time. It's nice. So hopefully win this game and we can have a drink after. Don't blush, baby.
I'm not blushing. Any injuries? Did you have any?
Chris Gale has been fined more than £3,000 by the Australian team he represents for asking a female presenter out on a date during a live television interview. Gale, the former West Indies captain, also complimented the presenter on her eyes during the interview. He later apologised and said he'd been joking.
It was more that it was just unexpected. Of course, you don't expect to get that sort of answer, and a little bit disappointing because I'm not used to seeing that. It just doesn't happen normally. I don't really want to be the subject of such conversations. I like just going about my business and doing my job, but definitely a good thing that people are talking. And, you know, we want equality, we always want equality, and I've always felt in my career, I've felt nothing but respect.
And I'm very angry at, for example, the governments that are not doing enough to protect women and to change the way men disrespect women in so many ways.
Governments don't protect women. Men do.
I said you need to back the fuck up. That's a woman. Touch a girl without her permission. This is what I'm gonna do to you. Don't you ever do that shit again, you hear me? You hear me? No, don't touch her again. Hey, motherfucker! Stop the gun! Stay out of it, guys! What are you gonna do? Stay out of it! What are you gonna fucking do? Stay the fuck out of it! What the fuck are you gonna do, bitch?
My husband and I have been married for 15 years, 2 months shy, in fact. And as embarrassing as it is to say it, I never knew he suffered from depression. My guess is he was clinically depressed, but he was active, he was engaged. He got more done in a day than I ever did.
Unfortunately, there's so much of these stories out there that show the way we've dehumanized male sexuality and continually to do so. Now, I'm not going to claim that I'm a male's right defender or that I care as much as a vegan teacher cares about being vegan, because I'd be a hypocrite. What gets me the most is the hypocrisy of feminism and the impact these beliefs have on the youth generation. Feminism has gone to extremism, and that's affecting our freedom of speech, our health, our relationships, and the youth culture. To wrap it up, you are entitled to your beliefs, and I'm not here to change them, but to encourage you to think for yourself, regardless of the camp you're going to join. Having opposite beliefs and set of values are rather healthy for society. What is not healthy is to disregard and dehumanize all men because of past experience with trash
I'm
people.
the oldest bachelorette, this 39 that's standing here that's single, because I didn't settle for men like that.